D. All right, way to go. Hang on. I'm always trying to figure out how the equipment works. It's really wonderful to look around and it's like, hi, it's fantastic to be here and fantastic to see all of you. I've been away now for 3 weeks, and this is my first Dharma talk from getting back from what I'm calling my sabbatical. Because since the project to rebuild Columbus KTC, I've been away. I've actually had some time away. So from 2016 until now, I've had a couple of sojourns away, most notably in 2019 when Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche passed away, and there were 2 months of ceremonies after he passed away. And so since 2019, I haven't had time off. And I was so happy to have this opportunity, and I want to thank Chuck and the members of the board for making this possible for me to take 3 weeks to go to our home monastery in Woodstock, New York, and do a 1-week program as a participant, and then take a week of just my own personal practice, and then a week for the 3-year retreat graduates reunion. I know having a class reunion for 3-year retreatants sounds a little bit strange. We don't party much. We mostly pray all day from like 9 a.m. until 5 p.m. with a lunch break. But we're reciting the practices that we did in retreat, and it's kind of like an old home visit. You know, you're revisiting people and practices that became a deep part of your life for the 3 years that you were in the retreat. Many people do ask about the 3-year retreat. Once they hear about it, they wonder what it's all about. And what I can tell you about it is that in our tradition of Buddhism, a person doesn't become a clergy or a minister and get the title of Lama without first doing this retreat. And so my husband, I remember when I went on retreat in 1992, I left for my pre-retreat experience. And then the retreat itself went from 93 to 96. And so I remember when my husband was talking with me about it, he said, thanks so much. He said, I really wish there was some other way you could do this. I wish there was some other way you could get your training. He said, but we've been married for 20 years, so I guess you've earned a vacation. Anyhow, so I was able to do the retreat with his and my parents' blessing, so that was a good thing. But we live as monks and nuns in the 3-year retreat. And that means you get up at dark 30 and you don't go to bed until it's also dark. and you live a monastic schedule, doing 4 sessions of meditation in your own room, and then 2 what we would call, in modern Christian terms, chapel services, morning and evening. That's what your life is for 3 years. And they say, oh, well, did you study a lot of Buddhist philosophy? And I said, no, but I did a lot of mantra. And Dharma was taught to us in the context of our practices. And the 3 things that we mainly learned about were about karma, action, cause, and result. We learned a lot about that. We learned a lot about compassion meditation and the transformation of mental afflictions. And then we learned a lot about Buddha nature. In fact, a lot about Buddha nature. Many, many teachings were given to us about Buddha nature and how that Buddha nature is the same within all people, and that all people have the potential to be Buddhas, and that that's why everyone is deserving of respect. So that was what we mainly learned in the 3-year retreat. Was not a lot of philosophy, not a lot of scholarly, intellectual, although that aspect was there. It was not front and center. Front and center was mantra practice, where we practiced being aware of our Buddha nature in the form of a Buddha that we meditated upon. And we meditated upon that Buddha as being our ultimate Buddha nature in the form of this, the feminine aspect, Vajrayogini, and the masculine aspect, Chakrasamvara, and so on. But we also did extensive meditation on Chenrezig, the Bodhisattva of compassion, who we all know and love, and who is the focus of one of our major practices here. And so that's a little bit about what I did on my fall vacation, or my late summer vacation, is that I went and met with my 3-year retreat friends, and also attended some more teachings by the Lopan, the Vajra master who was here. And they were amazing, and he was amazing. And we got a chance. I don't know if Chuck's already told this story or not, so I'm going to tell a little story on you. The board of Columbus KTC wrote a letter to Khenpo Urgyen Tenzin, who is the abbot of the monastery, and we invited him to come and teach us next year. And I said, it's unlikely, but could we write a letter to Lama Tobden and ask him to come back too? And of course the answer was yes, and so we wrote a letter. But when Chuck was visiting KTD in September, he found Khenpo Urgyen very easily, but Lama Tobden was a bit elusive. So I tracked him down because I was attending his program, and I said, here's a letter for, and he all he would say is thank you, no commitment. I did my best, but hopefully at some future time, if the world permits, they will be able to see him and and Khenpo Sanjay again next year. I hope so. So that was a little bit about my time away, and what I will say is that being able to sit and meditate for longer than 5 minutes at a time is great. And so being able to attend the teachings and attend meditation sessions and just be in the passenger seat, it was really great, and I liked the scenery. It was just as vast as all outdoors. So I'm happy to be back, but I'm also already planning my next sojourn so that I can take a little retreat next year. So I wanted to start just by expressing my gratitude for having that opportunity and being able to come back. And then I also wanted to, before I give my talk today, talk about something that will be next week's topic, but I realize that I may not be doing my talks in the right order, but I also wanted to mention that we're going to be doing, I mean, you're all familiar with the idea that we're doing a fall fund drive for the center's operating funds, but I don't know if you know, we're going to be doing a Chenrezig Saturday retreat on November the 4th, which is a Buddhist holiday this year. The Tibetan Buddhist tradition, like many Buddhist traditions, runs on a lunar calendar, not a solar calendar. And therefore, it's a little harder for those of us who live on a solar calendar day to day, where the days of the week and the months of the year were all named by the Romans or something. Anyhow, so we live in a different system. But it's fun to hear and think about the the movement of the moon and the calendar that's based on the lunar cycles. So in the lunar calendar, it's a week from this coming Saturday, November the 4th, is the day of one of the 4 great holidays celebrated in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition that keys to an event in the life of the Buddha. After the Buddha's enlightenment, he wanted to repay his mother's kindness because she had died after giving birth to him. Just a few days after he was born, she passed away, and he wanted to visit her in her new life and teach her teach her Dharma as a way of thanking her for giving him life. And so this particular holiday on the 4th of November commemorates his visitation to his mother as well as his return to his teaching duties here in this world. So whether we believe these stories that are told about the Buddhist life or not, the theme of gratitude and having gratitude for one's life and having gratitude for the capacity to live one's life it's an amazing thing. And so I'm really super pleased that we're going to be able to celebrate that on the 4th. And it's said that any of these days that are associated with events in the life of the Buddha, the effects of positive and negative actions done on that day are multiplied. It's said, that's what's said. Some people don't really believe in calendar feng shui. We call it astrology here. And some people don't really put much stock in all of that. But there is actually a Tibetan Buddhist science of astrology and calendar making. And they say that there is a type of auspiciousness that's associated with those times of the year. So we always tell people on those special days, do your best not to get mad at the family. Do your best, like, not to engage in nasty speech online. You know, even if that person did disagree with you, it's probably not the best day to do that. But it's a really good day to do meditation and mantra and prayer. So we're going to arrange that. We're going to do something called in Tibetan, the word is nyingne, and that would be spelled in English letters as N as in Nancy, Y-I-N-G-N-E. Nyingne. Nying has like the connotation of something shorter, something concentrated. It's actually a one-day form of a longer practice called nyungne, which is a fasting retreat. It basically got started centuries ago when an Indian Buddhist princess got exiled from her home because she contracted leprosy. In those days, they would exile people with leprosy because it was not understood. And so she had to live in the forest. And she came upon a statue, an old stone statue of the Bodhisattva Chenrezig, and she was inspired by seeing the statue and said, you know, I'm just going to do Chenrezi mantra practice. That's going to be what I do while I'm here in my exile. And so she spent days and days and days and days and days doing mantra practice. And she practiced fasting every other day. So she didn't just pray, she fasted every other day. And eventually she was cured of her leprosy. And so as a result, this practice was developed as a way of commemorating her sacrifice and her belief in her faith and her confidence. And so it gives us an opportunity to practice as she did. In Tibetan, she's called Gelongma Palmo. P-A-L-M-O means glorious woman, a glorious woman, Palmo. And so we commemorate Gelongma, because she became monastic after her exile, the monastic Palmo. And so we commemorate her by doing this practice that she developed. And she had intense faith in the power of compassion and intense faith in the power of love. And because she had this intense faith, she effected a cure. Now, your results may vary, so we're not making any claims here. But should you wish to, pardon me, should you wish to participate in this one-day retreat, it will happen on Saturday, the 4th of November. It was, in fact, it was just published last night on Eventbrite. So if you follow us on Eventbrite, it'll be there. You'll have to excuse me for a moment. I'm going to say fall allergies, which is very similar to spring and summer allergies. Excuse me. So that will be on the 4th of November. And for folks who don't exactly think that they would like to eat one meal and fast for half a day, you may not be interested in that part of it. But you would like to do some compassion mantra, you can stop in, because we'll have office hours for the public to come and practice Chenrezig with the group. It won't be silent meditation because we're going to be chanting out loud and ringing bells and things like that. So it won't be a moment necessarily for silent meditation unless you're good with a little bit of ring-a-ding-ding and so forth, and mantra recitation. So we'll be doing that from like 6:30 in the morning till 5:30 in the evening, but we will have office hours for the public, I think from 10 to 12 and 2 to 4. And you can come and just sit in the back and recite as many Om Mani Padme Hum compassion mantras as you want to, write them on a piece of paper, toss them in the basket, and then you can also go out and make offerings. We're going to have flower petals for people to toss around our stupa for people who want to do a little bit of practice of veneration of the stupa. So we're going to have that as well. So anyhow, I just wanted you to mark your calendars in case that was of interest to you. And so that was a little bit of commercial, I guess you could say. But what I wanted to talk about today was how meditation can help us in coping with the situation we're finding ourselves in at this moment. I of course, waste my time on social media like everybody else. You know, that's my biggest time sink, if you want to call it that, where my time gets sunk down deep in the internet. But the other day, somebody put a quotation that made me stop. And we all know that memes are meant to become viral and repeat and all of that kind of stuff. And there's plenty of negative ones out there, but I really liked this one. And it has to do with facing injustice with hope. Because I don't know if people have been watching the news lately, but it's not looking good at the moment. There's a lot of people very angry everywhere in the world right now. There are people who are rattling their swords, saying, oh, let's go to war. And there are people who are already at war. There are killings happening in cities around the United States where people of a certain religion or of a certain skin color are being murdered for who they are. And it makes those of us who read the news feel a little depressed. Can I get an amen? Yeah, okay, so yeah, we read this and we do need to be informed. There's no question that it's important for us to be informed about what's going on in the world. But it's very hard for us to be informed while at the same time holding an evenness inside. It's not easy. Because we want to believe the best about people, but frequently all we see is the worst. and that can make us feel discouraged about the state of the world that we're in. And so I thought it would be useful for us to do just a little bit of meditation today for the world. We'll get to that in a few minutes. We'll meditate for the world in a few minutes. But the reason I wanted to bring this up was because of this internet meme that I saw on Facebook. So even though Facebook is a great time waster and can be really a source of a lot of poisonous attitudes, every now and then something good pops up from the flotsam and jetsam of the internet. And this one said, "This, my dear, is the greatest challenge to being alive, to witness the injustice of this world and not allow it to consume our light." I'm going to read that again. "This, my dear, is the greatest challenge of being alive, to witness injustice of this world and not allow it to consume our light." And that is the challenge that's being given to us, because we don't want to close our eyes to the injustices of the world. No one is asking for that. But what we are asking is to not let preoccupation with the injustices of the world consume our own inherent natural inherent and natural light. And so in order to talk about that, I do have to say a few things about Buddhist teachings. And I apologize for having gotten this far without realizing that I was supposed to lead a prayer. So let's do that. I mean, right? It doesn't matter how late I am with doing the things I'm supposed to do here. There's like a format, you know. But so what this is also a very Buddhist thing to do, is to recite an intention at the beginning of any activity, and to state our intention in that activity, and then to hopefully persevere in that intention. So the one we start with is the prayer of taking refuge. What we'll do is we'll recite this 2 times together in English, and then I'll recite it 1 time in Tibetan at the end. And we turn our mind toward all suffering beings right now, making the aspiration that whatever we do here will help relieve their suffering. We start with the words in the Buddha. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. Now the chant. O Sanje Chudan Soji Chodnamla Jang Chu Pardu Dani Kyab Suchi Daji Jinso Jibe Sunam Ki Drola Penshir Sanjay Druparsho. Okay, thank you. I'll recite a short prayer of my own. O Palden Sawe Lama Rinpoche Tagi Chiwar Pede Ten Shula Kadrin Jembo Gone Je Sunte Kusum Tugging Udrup Sal to Soul. Okay, thanks. All right. So how to face injustice and not let it consume our light? Well, I think to begin with, I think that all human beings have an impulse toward goodness, and that's a basic teaching of the Buddha. We think about what life is like for babies. Babies are, very helpless creatures, and yet they seem to be open to everything. They seem to have a certain purity and innocence. And that's how we all start out life. And I think that that life then sometimes deals us misfortune and pain and suffering. And that sometimes we forget about that innocence, and we forget about that inner purity and goodness that we had. I have a friend right now who is bemoaning their situation in life, that they've come to, we'll call it a certain age, and they realize that their happiness and innocence of childhood is gone, and they're mourning the loss of that. And I think in some ways we can all commiserate with this friend of mine, because we can think of simpler and easier times. But the fact of the matter is, we all have naturally occurring goodness within us. It's still there. The person who says, well, I've lost my innocence, or I've lost who I was, the fact of the matter is they haven't lost that person at all. The person is still there. It's just that we've stopped paying attention to them. We've given so much of our attention over to negative situations and the news and preoccupation and worry and anxiety. We've given so much of this ourselves over to this that we have forgotten who we are in some ways. And we need these reminders. And so that's why in places like this, in Buddhist centers all over, we start everyone with a quiet sitting practice like we do here every Sunday at 10. We give this oasis for people here, and they can come here and they can sit and just be without and set aside momentarily at least their anxieties and worries, by returning again and again to the breath as the object of meditation, returning again and again and again, coming home, as one of the Lamas put it. One of our Lamas said, when you bring your attention back to the breath when it wanders, and you're out in some la-la land doing something, and then suddenly you recognize that you're thinking, and you come back to your breath for a fresh start in your meditation, it's like you're coming home. You're coming home. And so that's why we teach that practice first, so that people remember to come home again and again and again, just come home. And it was such a pleasure, by the way, yesterday being here, cleaning up things in my office and getting ready for the week, and seeing the people, the 10 or so people who were here yesterday for the meditation day. We'll continue to have these as little oases of sitting practice for folks who like it. But we don't stop there. We start then talking about our basic Buddha nature, our basic goodness in our Dharma classes. And then the second meditation we teach is compassion meditation, where we teach people about the importance of compassion for themselves and for others. And by rehearsing the feelings of compassion, imagining on the out-breath that we're giving love and happiness to other beings, and removing suffering from them on the in-breath, and giving out goodness on the out-breath again and again and again. By doing this, we rehearse what it's like to live out our Buddha potential, to live out of our Buddha nature. We rehearse it because, sometimes, as my friends in 12-step like to say, you gotta fake it till you make it, right? You have to do that. And so that's why that's the second meditation, because when we are removing our worries and anxieties through the practice of quiet sitting practice, you might think, well, what are we going to put in there instead? What are we going to do with all of that time? What are we going to do with all that space? Well, we're going to fill it up with the intention to be of benefit to oneself and to be a benefit to others. And that's what we're going to fill it up with. And then when we teach the third style of meditation that we do here, which is mantra meditation, in a way, we're working with the basic nature of everything. Those of you who read Buddhist philosophy, you'll know that the Buddha said that our minds are limitless. Mind doesn't have a color, doesn't have a shape, doesn't have a location, doesn't have a beginning, doesn't have an end. But this concept of limitlessness, or some people like to call it emptiness, I think I like limitlessness better. One of my teachers, who is His Eminence Taisita Rinpoche, he says, the word emptiness, it always confused me. He said, why did you use that word in English? He said, that doesn't make any sense. He said, emptiness makes me think of the number 0 and nothingness. He said, I prefer to think of the word limitless, meaning that it is without limiting characteristics, that the mind is actually vast and open and full of potential. He said, now that's how I like to think about the mind. So in this way, we think about the limitless potential of mind by visualizing Buddhas made of light that are empty inside, which in a way is a way of talking about our basic awareness, our basic mind, our basic awareness, which is behind all of the stories and all of the thoughts that we tell ourselves. You've probably experienced this at least once or twice in your life, this awareness. Like maybe if you got suddenly surprised, or maybe you were in the depths of sorrow, you felt this intensity and this sort of groundlessness. But the idea is we can actually key into the positive aspects of our awareness at any time, anywhere, any time, by just coming to rest and being aware of that awareness itself. We're aware of what we see, we're aware of what we hear, but we can also be aware of awareness, maybe only for 2 or 3 seconds at a time. But that awareness is what's called ordinary mind in the lexicon of Buddhism. It's our ordinary state. It's the state of mind that's not cluttered up by concepts and habits and afflictions. And so for us, being able to be aware like that, it's a gift. But even if we can't do it for more than a few seconds at a time, we can train in doing it by using the practice of visualization, which is meditating on a form that is emptiness. We always visualize the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas as being made of light. And I'm beginning to hear from my science friends that that's maybe what we are. It could be, we're just light moving at different speeds, which is kind of interesting, right? So visualizing ourselves or a Buddha being present with us is a way of meditating on that awareness itself. It's a way of rehearsing, again, that awareness and being present with one's basic nature. And because that basic nature is being visualized in the form of a Buddha, an enlightened one, a person or a being who is both compassionate, 100% compassionate, 100% wise, then we associate these things with our basic awareness. And so our basic awareness, instead of taking the shape of worry, fear, and anxiety, it takes the shape of the medicine Buddha, or it takes the shape of Chenrezig or Tara. And this is, for me, kind of the genius of visualization and mantra meditation, is that it gives our basic goodness a shape and a face that we can relate to. And by doing these practices, we can actually transform ourselves in an interior way. And this interior transformation then can become part of how we interface with the whole world. Because when we get up from a mantra meditation, the instruction is remember that you are Medicine Buddha, or remember that you are Tara, or remember that you are Chenrezig from time to time. So you could be feeding the kids, washing the dishes, driving the car, and boom, suddenly you are a Buddha made of light, driving the car, or being yelled at by the boss. I mean, anything is possible. So in any case, in these ways, we learn about who we are and then remind ourselves about who we are over and over and over again. And in so doing, we become accustomed to seeing ourselves and experiencing ourselves as that. Now, what does this have to do with the quotation? The quotation, the challenge of being alive is to witness injustice and not allow it to consume our light. And I think that one of the things we can do in these situations is that we do feel helpless when we see the news. We feel helpless. We feel like the world is going in a bad direction and we can't stop it. There are always small things that we can do in our community, in our Sangha here with each other, to bring more kindness into our relationships and more goodness into our world here, in this Sangha here, as well as in our families at home, in our workplace. We can bring more compassion into our everyday life, into our everyday situation. And that is a way to exercise, if you want to use that kind of word, we can exercise our light and strengthen our light by doing these practices on a regular basis, and by restraining ourselves when we feel like saying that one thing we really want to say to somebody, and by taking a step back, taking a moment and stepping back, and maybe not saying that thing that is in our mind, and creating something that we might regret later. So these are the ways that we can, I guess you could say, perform radical action, because it's very radical to not join in an argument. To not join in an argument, it's very radical. And to not think badly of others, and it's very radical to abstain from these things. And so it's something that we can do little by little, is first restrain ourselves from saying that thing, and restrain ourselves from thinking badly of others, and find healthy ways to bless others, especially people that we're in conflict with. That's really important. We have to bless the people we're in conflict with. I know that doesn't sound like fun, but it's something we have to think about. We have to think about being able to bless people we feel a conflict with, because we can't fix them. I don't know if that's news. I'm not a therapist myself. I've been in therapy for more than 10 years, and sometimes I think it worked. But the idea is that we all need to relax our minds, and we all need to find ways to express ourselves, and to be in this world in a way that's healthy for us. We have to find that. We have to find that. And these three tools, sitting meditation, compassion meditation, and mantra meditation, are the tools that we use here to try to make that happen for us. And that we don't have to go away and learn something new. It's something, if we can just even learn how to relax into our own natural awareness, that's something that we carry with us all the time. And that is something that can help us in all situations. And so how do we see the injustice, and how do we work with injustice? I think it depends on our skill level. I remember Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, the founder of our center, once said, it really depends on your skill, Because if you possess the skill to work in a conflict zone, wherever that conflict zone is, whether it's in an interpersonal conflict or whether it's in an international conflict or wherever, if you possess the skill level to work with in a conflict situation, he said, definitely use your skill. But if you don't possess that skill, he said, there are still things you can do. And he said, you can imagine that the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are blessing the people who are in conflict. And he said, if you see two people arguing, or if you see two, even if you, anyway, if you, I'm going to extrapolate. He talked about two people in conflict, but we can extrapolate nations in conflict, family members in conflict. We can see these conflicts. And he said, what you do is that you pray and send positive potential toward both of the people involved in the conflict. The person who you perceive as being the aggressor, you bless them, as well as the person you perceive as being the victim. You bless them both because they both need it, because both of them are locked into a confusion and both of them are suffering. And so he said, if you can do this, he said, this is the next best thing you can do. He says, if you got the skill to go sort out that conflict, fantastic. But if you don't possess that, then you can send your love, compassion, and goodness toward both sides in a conflict and pray that they all come to their senses and that peace prevails. And His Holiness the Karmapa was asked about social action. Can you protest? Can you demonstrate and make your displeasure known? He said, well, it depends on the individual. He said some people can protest injustice while remaining in an inner state of love and equanimity. But if you can't remain in a state of love and equanimity while you're protesting, he said, it might not be good for you. If your protests and demonstrations lead you into states of internal turmoil and anger, then continuing to express your inner turmoil and anger in the form of demonstration, he said, may not be 100% mentally healthy for you. So that puts us all on notice, doesn't it? To be aware of our motivation before we do anything. There's a statement from the Buddha that I may not be able to recall perfectly from memory, but it's like when you want to criticize someone, you have to think about where you are before you open your mouth. You have to speak from a place of love. You have to speak to that person in a way that they can hear you, not harshly. So if you want to criticize someone, you speak gently, kindly, and from your heart. And you speak truthfully, but you speak kindly. And so this is something that the Buddha himself said, you should speak to someone's benefit, not to their detriment. So if you have a conversation with someone and you walk away from them and they're crying, it's probably you might have need a little extra skill. Need to apply a little extra skill. So slowly, this is how we can work on conflicts in our own situation, our own lives. Because the world, they're going through a lot right now. Everyone is suffering. So that's why I wanted to take a moment and do a little meditation for the world. But before we do the meditation for the world, I want to see if anybody has something they'd like to discuss. Because we've got like 5 or so minutes. And yeah, you can come to the microphone if you don't mind. Yeah. Thanks, by the way, to the sound department. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Hi.
Hey, hi there.
I have a quote that I remembered from Thich Nhat Hanh, and it said that spiritual practice is the basis of all social action.
Yeah.
He wrote that in the beginning of his book, Interbeing, and that is an entire book dedicated to that subject. But I wanted to ask if you thought that was true.
I think that if we go all the way back to the Buddha, the collection of his sayings, the Dhammapada, he says, hate never once dispelled hate. Only love dispels hate. And then he said, this is the law, ancient and inexhaustible. Thich Nhat Hanh paraphrased that in his own teachings. And the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King really admired Thich Nhat Hanh's work for civil justice as well as for peace. And he actually modeled one of his own sermons on that. And so I think that it seems to me that it would be true, because if we are using our push for justice in the world to justify our own unbridled expression of our inner anger and turmoil, then we've got a problem. So, but I don't know if that's what you take from Thich Nhat Hanh's words. What do you think?
I thought it was, I've been reading The Great Path of Awakening, and in that book it says something along the lines of the great mystery is the exchange of self and other, either that or it's in the way of the Bodhisattva, either way. If you can't exchange yourself in another person, then how can you understand what it is that they're going through, or what anything that's going on in their lives?
Yeah, you got it exactly. You've got it exactly. I like to say that whenever I'm angry with someone for the way that I perceive that they've treated me, I try to put myself in their position, and I try to see the world as they see it. But the phrase, and I think you and I talked about this, was at some time in the recent, that I like to go to the place of their fear. Because when people act out angrily, they're often motivated by a fear. Maybe they are afraid that they're irrelevant, or maybe they fear that they're alone, or maybe they fear that their life doesn't have meaning, or whatever. But sometimes people act badly because they want to have an impact on the world because they fear that they don't matter, you know? And so if somebody's coming at me with anger, they're coming from a place generally where they're afraid of something. And so by placing myself, even just intellectually, even if I'm wrong, in the place where they hurt, that helps me a lot, because I don't judge them as much after the fact. We all have bad habits of reacting. Somebody yells at me, I'll probably yell back, because I'm just a confused, broken human being, right? But as I go back over it in my mind, I will make the aspiration to do better, because I know that I have the potential to do better and be better. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Yeah, the mystery of exchanging oneself for others. Wow, right? That's powerful. Anybody else have something you'd like to share? Yes, I'm just realizing I'm wearing my snacks. I love getting older, don't you?
Thank you, Lama. Kathy, it's good to have you back.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thank you.
So I had a question that came up. I was thinking about as you were relating your experiences in 3-year retreat and being shut in to fully focus on your practice, and your experiences now when you watch the news and you get depressed by what you see, but yet it's important to stay informed. As you said, it's important to stay informed. Why? Why is it important to stay informed? Why not practice more like you did in retreat and just focus on your development and not necessarily, get pulled into all that negativity in the news.
You make an excellent point. You make an excellent point. And I think that generalizations are always problematic. So for me to say that it's good to be informed could be an unnecessary generalization. So I appreciate you pointing that out. But I also think that it depends on the individual, because some individuals can be informed while maintaining an internal equilibrium. But other people, it's hard. They can't really stay informed and keep an internal equilibrium. So yeah, you're right. People have to make their own choice. They have to know themselves well enough to know when they're overstimulating their worry reflex, I'm just going to make up a silly example, but if being informed causes them a lot of trouble, then it is better for them not to be. Yeah. But I think that the main thing is that there will always be room in this world for hermits. We've had people who are hermits, all through history. There's always going to be a place for them, because there will always be people for whom involvement in the world is too much. It's just too much. And they have to respect that. The example I'm thinking of is Milarepa, because he spent 12 years in a cave, right? And when he came out, he was an enlightened being. When he went in, he was a confused individual, but when he came out, he was enlightened. But then some of his students said to him, well, why can't you be like your teacher, Milarepa? Your teacher, Marpa, he's got a family, he's got kids, he's got a farm, he lives comfortably. Why can't you be like him? And he says, because I'm not him. If I had all of those things, I wouldn't be a holy person. It's impossible for me. So I'm not sure if that speaks to your question or your thought. What's missing from?
No, it really does. I was just interested to hear you expand more on it. I mean, I often feel that way. Like, I do need to stay informed, and sometimes it's just too much, and it doesn't seem to serve any purpose, right, other than to try to focus on my practice. And I appreciate you expanding on that. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I do think that we have to know ourselves. I mean, that's really, in the end, the challenge. We have to know when we are strong and where we are strong and where we are weak. We have to really just confess that this is who we are right now, today. And that right now, today, we need to do X, Y, or Z, because it's just, that's where we are today.
Yeah.
But I think that it's important to also, while we are doing that, to hold a good heart toward ourselves and then toward all of these people in the world who are in conflict right now. Because we have a bit of a luxury right this second, and that, that we're not running from saber-toothed tigers or, that kind of thing. We're not running from dinosaurs. Oh, sorry, that didn't happen. Anyway, but, sorry. I've been watching the Flintstones. Anyhow, just kidding. I'm not watching the Flintstones. But I think we do have to recognize who we are and where we are and when we are there, then take the time we need. So I think everybody needs to have a moment to be a hermit and see how that feels.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no thanks. There's time for one more. Is there one more out there? One more comment? Yeah.
This might actually be tall.
Yeah, I love it that the mic is adjustable. I tell you what, the right
Very
equipment, right?
For sure. I was thinking recently, I appreciate the hermit stuff. I guess I'm going through something like that right now and like trying to be intentional about it. But what I was thinking before that comment was about when you find yourself being confronted by somebody who's struggling and end up lashing out at you for it. The reaction to that, I guess the reaction to that always makes me question whether or not, it's okay for us to give something like that back to them because of us just being, I'm trying to word this right, because of us being basically agents of the golden rule, which I not very Christian anymore at all, but I still hold that. I think of that one a lot and do unto others.
Every religion has it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, I honestly think it maybe came from Buddhism even before Christianity, but I guess I've been wondering what your thoughts were on, like, how far back does it put us when we end up just being agents of the golden rule? Because we do have kind of a role to play in this whole big picture of Homo sapien sapien. And I was wondering, like, you know, what do we think of ourselves when we get to that point? Or are we supposed to get more to a place where, like the Inuit people up north, the natives up north in Canada.
The what?
The Inuit people up north, the natives up north in Canada.
Okay.
When people come at them like that, they just kind of shut down. They just don't give them anything and show them that they get nothing for that behavior, which is also pretty interesting.
Yeah.
If you're a parent, it definitely works. I definitely use that with my kids. And so I guess I was wondering, like, is that a better way of doing it, or is it just another way than when you actually are kind of giving back people energy that they give you?
I see what you're saying. It's complex. I think what you're recognizing is the complexity of it. Because if you give back what someone has given you without skill and without compassion, then it's probably not useful.
Yeah.
But in the long term, short term, you might feel better. Somebody did this to me one time. This guy came up to me, and he just like yelled at me, like, you're a this and you're a that, and you know, da 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 da, and this and that, and I demand that you do X, Y, Z, and I'm just like, and I'm terrified of this guy coming at me, and so I backed out of the situation. I just walked away from it because I couldn't take anymore. And then I saw him later. He didn't apologize. He said, I felt so much better after doing that. And I said, well, that's good for you, but what about me? You left me in tears. I was upset. So thanks, I'm glad you feel better, but it didn't do anything for me. And he had nothing to say about that. But so I feel like it really comes down to your skill level. If you've got the skill to intervene in a situation, fantastic, right? But if you don't have it, you've got to be careful and be somewhat protective of your energy and your heart. But I'm still not sure I'm addressing your question. I think I've missed it.
I think you are. So would you say, like with me, and I've had people be loud at me and stuff like that. I mean, I'm a boxer. I'm regularly at a boxing gym.
Uh-huh.
They can get mad after sparring sometimes. But that's kind of part of the learning process. Like boxing in a weird way kind of teaches you to have compassion no matter what you're doing.
Get it. Yeah, when
And so
to move forward and when to back up.
Yeah, when to move forward, when to back up, but also what to think when you're moving forward and when you're backing up. Boxing's very much about training the mind. And so would you say that compassion is kind of the catalyst? Like because I've broken up fights between other people, and I mean, I go to KISS concerts, if you know anything about those, they're fights. And I've broken them up, but I've always kept compassion in my mind. I've always maintained like I have to be kind to both of these individuals, or however many. So would you say compassion is more the catalyst than what you actually do, and to kind of like look at what the situation is? But as long as compassion's there?
I think that I can't, with blanket, I can't make a blanket statement about that, but I do feel that it's huge.
Yeah.
That compassion needs to be involved in whatever we're doing, even if we are not, even if we can't, if we can't practice compassion perfectly, that it has to be part of the equation, or we're going to fall into selfish error. Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche observed a group of us working together at the home monastery once. And he said, if I could be frank, he said, you spend a lot of time trying to overpower each other. And he said, just isn't good. You're not going anywhere. You're not getting anything done because you're wasting all of your time trying to overpower one another. And he said, you have to find a different way. So that stuck with me quite a bit. It's like, am I trying to overpower someone? And it's like, make them think what I think they should think.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Or running over their feelings or something like that.
Yeah, I don't, yeah, all kinds of bad things can happen, yeah. So, okay, thank you. Well, let's take a moment to do the simple metta meditation of extending love to people. We won't do the more complicated sending and receiving meditation because we're short on time. So let's take a few minutes now just to anchor our attention in our breathing and just be aware of our breathing for a moment or two. And then becoming aware of our inner motivation to be of benefit to all beings. We form the motivation to want to benefit them because they are suffering. In the metta meditation, you mentally extend love and goodness to others. So we begin by mentally extending love and goodness to ourselves. Sending ourselves love and goodness. And then all of the people we are close to, we think of them and extend to them love and goodness. Next, we think of all of the people and animals in the world, and we mentally extend goodness to all of those beings who fly and swim, and all human beings as well. And finally, we send love and goodness to all of those who are involved in conflict and war and who are committing negative actions. We pray for them and send them love and goodness and make the aspiration that their minds are changed. At last, we conclude the meditation by letting go of the visualization and letting our mind come to rest in its natural, aware state. Okay, all right. I thank you for being part of this, because I think we need to do this for ourselves and for the world. So if you have some time this week to visit the world with some kindness and goodness, that would be a good thing to do. It's also a very Buddhist thing to dedicate the goodness that we've accomplished here and dedicate it to all beings. And because we're short on time, we'll just do it in English today. Starting with the words, by this merit. By this merit, may all attain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy, wrongdoing, from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. The courageous Manjushri, who knows everything as it is, Samantabhadra, who also knows in the same way, and all the bodhisattvas, that I may follow in their path, I completely dedicate all this virtue. Thanks, everyone. Thank you. And thank you to the sound department. Thank you.